A hotel cleaner answered a call in Dutch in front of a millionaire. The next day, he sent for her. She was just a hotel cleaner, until one phone call in perfect Dutch changed everything. When a billionaire passing by overheard it, he stopped in his tracks. The next day, Emily was summoned to the hotel's main office. No explanation, no warning. From mopping floors to sitting across from the mysterious owner of the hotel, her life started to shift in ways she never imagined. But what did he want from her? And why her, of all people? This isn't just a story about luck. It's about secrets, second chances, and an unexpected connection. Ready to find out what happens next? The alarm's shrill sound cut through the stillness of the early morning like a buzzsaw. 5 a.m. again. Emily Taus groggily reached for the clock radio on her nightstand and silenced it with a tired swipe. She stared at the cracked ceiling of her cramped studio apartment in Queens. The flickering shadows from the street lamp outside danced on the peeling paint like ghosts she hadn't invited. She let out a heavy sigh. Just another day, another chance. Dragging herself into the bathroom, she braced herself for the ice-cold water, as the hot water had been out for weeks. The frigid splash against her skin was a harsh wake-up call. As the water ran down her face, she whispered the mantra her grandmother had taught her in Spanish, now in English. One day at a time. One step forward. She tried to believe it. By 6:30 a.m., she was clocking in through the back door of the Atoria Grand Hotel, a historic 5-star establishment in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Her name tag read, Housekeeping, Emily. That day, she was assigned the 5th floor. Rooms, hallways, the executive lounge, and possibly some help with the breakfast buffet if they were short-staffed. She was quick, focused, and invisible, just the way they liked it. But Emily wasn't just a housekeeper. She wasn't who she seemed. She had graduated at the top of her class from Hunter College with a degree in foreign languages, fluent in English, French, German, and most recently Dutch, a language she'd fallen in love with thanks to a visiting professor from Amsterdam. They'd kept in touch ever since, and he mentored her from afar. Still, life hadn't been kind. Her mother's illness wiped out all their savings, and after her passing, Emily was left buried in debt. She took the first job she could find, housekeeping at the Atoria Grand, but she never stopped learning. Every evening after work, she took the Q line to the public library in Brooklyn, using the free computers to keep practicing her languages. Dutch grammar exercises and vocabulary drills felt like any other morning routine, until they didn't. As Emily was dusting the hallway near the penthouse suite, she heard footsteps approaching. She instinctively lowered her gaze, keeping her head down, when 3 men in suits strode past her. One of them immediately caught her attention. Tall, with dark hair and silver streaks at the temples, he wore a tailored navy suit without a tie, exuding authority. It was Ethan Morgan, the CEO of Morgan Lux Holdings, the billionaire owner of the hotel. Everyone on staff knew who he was. They whispered about his rise from humble beginnings, his obsession with perfection, and the legendary silence that followed him through the corridors. He was almost a myth among the employees. He barely glanced at her, or so she thought. A few hours later, during her lunch break, Emily sat alone in the staff lounge near the hotel's courtyard. She was reheating rice and beans from a Tupperware container when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Peter Van Linden, her Dutch mentor. You passed your certification. Call me when you can. Her heart raced. She immediately dialed his number. The moment he answered, she blurted out in Dutch, Did I really pass? You not only passed, Emily, you aced it. You're now officially certified at a professional fluency level in Dutch. She couldn't contain her smile. Tears welled up in her eyes as the years of early mornings and late nights studying finally paid off. She was still speaking to Peter in Dutch, laughing when the door creaked open behind her. She turned and froze. Ethan Morgan stood there, one eyebrow raised. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said in English, stepping into the room. "Were you speaking Dutch?" Emily jumped to her feet, fumbling with her phone, trying to end the call. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I was on break." "It's fine," he interrupted calmly. "Where did you learn it?" "I studied languages in college, sir. It's my passion." She avoided his gaze, feeling embarrassed and a little anxious. There was a brief pause. She braced herself for a reprimand, but instead, Ethan asked, "What's your name?" "Emily Torres." "Emily?" he repeated, as if tasting the name. He nodded slowly. "Thank you for your time. Enjoy your lunch." And just like that, he was gone. Ethan Morgan left the room, and Emily stood there, stunned. She slowly sank back into her chair, her heart racing in her chest. She tried to convince herself that it was nothing, just a curious moment, a passing interest. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The next day, when she arrived at work, her supervisor called her aside. "Human Resources wants to see you right now," her supervisor said, with a look that made Emily's stomach drop. "HR? Am I in trouble?" With a nervous breath, she made her way down to the main office. She knocked hesitantly on the door. "Come in," said Mrs. Valerie Green, the director of HR, glancing up from her desk. "Emily, sit down." Emily entered, her palms clammy as she clutched them tightly in her lap. Mrs. Green didn't waste any time. "I received a rather unusual request this morning," she began. "Mr. Morgan has asked that you be reassigned, effective immediately." Emily's mind spun. Reassigned. "You'll be moving into a newly created position," Mrs. Green continued. "Assistant in International Guest Relations." It took a moment for the words to sink in. "I'm sorry. What does that mean?" "It means you'll be working with our high-profile guests, especially those who don't speak English. You'll assist with translation, hospitality, and cultural coordination." Emily was left speechless, her mind struggling to keep up. "The role comes with a significant salary increase," Mrs. Green added, her eyes flickering over the paperwork in front of her. "About 3 times your current pay." Her voice trembled as she asked, "Is this real?" Mrs. Green gave a faint smile. "Very real. Mr. Morgan doesn't make random decisions. He believes your talents are wasted in housekeeping. You'll start today. He'd like to see you in his office after lunch." As Emily walked out of the HR office, her mind was a whirlwind. She passed the familiar hallway she used to mop each morning, but today everything looked different. The golden chandeliers, the deep red velvet carpets, even the soft elevator music. It all felt like part of a world she had never belonged to, until now. Her hand instinctively pressed against her chest, feeling the rapid thumping of her heart. Why her? What had Ethan Morgan seen in a hotel cleaner speaking Dutch over her lunch break? And more importantly, what was he really looking for? It was all too much to process in one breath, but deep down, something whispered in the back of her mind, "This is just the beginning." After lunch, Emily stood in front of the mirror in the staff dressing room. She wasn't wearing her cleaner's uniform anymore. Instead, she wore a perfectly tailored navy skirt, a silk blouse, and soft leather heels. Clothes that seemed to fit her as though someone had studied her closely. Her new name tag now read, International Guest Relations Associate. It felt surreal. The reflection staring back at her was no longer the tired, overworked Emily who mopped the hotel floors every morning. She didn't recognize the woman in the mirror, the one with the poised, confident posture, the one wearing an outfit that was both professional and elegant. She almost wondered if she'd somehow stepped into someone else's life. But then her phone buzzed. A quick glance at the screen, and her heart skipped a beat. It was a message from Mr. Morgan's office. Please report to Mr. Morgan's office immediately. The absurdity of it all made Emily's chest tighten. How had her life flipped so quickly? Just 2 days ago, she had been scrubbing marble floors in silence. Now she was expected to sit across from diplomats and CEOs, interpreting conversations in multiple languages for one of the most powerful men in the hospitality industry. As she made her way to the executive suite where Ethan Morgan awaited her, Emily's heels clicked sharply against the polished tiles, matching the rhythm of her racing heartbeat. She passed by the opulent chandeliers and high-end artwork she used to dust. Guests and staff alike met her eyes with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. One man even stepped aside for her, something that had never happened before. Outside the suite, she paused. A bellhop gave her a nod and opened the door. Inside, Ethan stood near the panoramic window, phone in hand, his gaze fixed on the skyline. When he turned to see her, his expression shifted, softening into something almost proud. "You look the part," he said, setting the phone down. "How does it feel?" Emily hesitated before answering. "Like I woke up in someone else's life." Ethan gave a small laugh, but it carried more sadness than amusement. "Maybe you're just waking up in your own." They sat across from each other on sleek leather chairs, no assistants, no formalities. For a moment, it was as though they were simply two people in a quiet room above the city. "Let me be honest," Ethan said, his voice lower now. "I didn't create this position for anyone else. I created it for you because I saw something in you. Actually, I heard something. Something that made me realize I've been overlooking the most talented people by simply not looking." Emily's stomach fluttered. She wanted to trust him, but years of disappointment had made her cautious. Still, there was something in his eyes, a quiet conviction, that made her stay seated. Ethan leaned forward. "I need your help this afternoon. There's a group of Dutch investors coming in. They're considering financing our first European expansion. I need someone who understands both the language and the people." Emily's heart raced. "But I've never been in a negotiation like that. I don't know the etiquette. I could mess everything up." "I'm not hiring you for etiquette," Ethan said. "I'm hiring you for empathy, for instinct, everything else we can teach. What you have, that can't be taught." The weight of his words silenced her. She nodded, her pulse quickening. "I'll do my best." Later that day, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the river, Emily stood beside Ethan as the group of foreign investors arrived. The room was filled with tall, sharp-eyed men with firm handshakes and unreadable smiles. Emily introduced herself in fluent Dutch, and the room visibly relaxed. The tension that had hung in the air, the potential for misunderstandings, seemed to dissipate. She translated with precision and grace, subtly adapting her tone and expressions to make sure both sides felt at ease. At one point, one of the men asked Ethan a question, clearly testing him. Before Ethan could answer, Emily gently intervened, explaining the cultural context behind the question. The man smiled, leaning back and nodding in acknowledgement. It was a silent victory. By the end of the meeting, Ethan was beaming. "You saved the entire deal," he whispered as they walked out. "I owe you more than I can say." As they stepped into the elevator, alone for the first time since the meeting, Emily exhaled deeply. "I didn't think I could do it." "I did," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "I saw it the moment I heard you speaking Dutch over lunch, like it was the most normal thing in the world." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Then Ethan spoke again, quieter this time. "I have a place I like to go when I need to think. Would you come with me tonight? No obligations, no expectations, just two people talking." Emily hesitated. She had never been invited into such a personal, intimate space. But something inside her said yes, before she could even think too hard about it. That evening, Ethan drove them to a secluded rooftop garden on the edge of the city, far from the neon lights and glass buildings. It was quiet up there, the hum of traffic faint below. The stars were dim but present, and a cool breeze ruffled her hair. "Do you come here often?" Emily asked, breaking the silence. "Only when I need to remember who I am," he replied, "or figure out who I'm becoming." They sat on a bench overlooking the city lights, sipping wine from paper cups. Ethan spoke about his early days, how he had once cleaned rooms too, in a hotel not much different from the one they were standing in now. He told her how building his empire had cost him more than he cared to admit. "I've made deals that earned millions," he said, "but none of them made me feel what I felt today. Watching you work," he confessed. Emily turned to look at him, her eyes wide. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think this," Ethan gestured between them, "might be the first honest thing I've had in years." The words hung in the air, tender and unspoken, charged with a meaning neither of them dared fully acknowledge. As Emily gazed out at the city lights below, something shifted inside her. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was seen. She was needed. And maybe, just maybe, she was cared for. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, negotiations, and late-night strategy sessions. Emily was no longer just the woman behind the cleaning cart. She had become Ethan's right hand, his interpreter, his advisor, and slowly something more. The transformation wasn't just professional. She felt it in the way people now looked at her, in how she carried herself. The hotel no longer felt like a palace she cleaned. It was a world she belonged to. Yet, beneath the newfound confidence, there was always a quiet tremor, a voice in her mind whispering, "What if all this vanishes as quickly as it appeared?" That fear clung to her, especially during the late-night talks she and Ethan shared. Their conversations often drifted from business logistics to life and belief. He never crossed a line, never made her feel uncomfortable. Maybe that was what made it more dangerous, the way he saw her, not as a temporary escape, but as someone who mattered. And in that, she felt vulnerable, in a way success never had. One evening, after a particularly long day, Ethan invited her to dinner again. But this time, it wasn't in a corner of the hotel. It was at his home. Emily hesitated, but she said yes. The car ride was quiet, filled with unspoken questions. When they arrived, his house wasn't what she had expected. It wasn't a cold, modern mansion, but a warm, lived-in home tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. The walls were lined with books, old photographs, and the faint scent of cedarwood lingered in the air. He wasn't a chef. There was no fancy delivery. It was just Ethan in a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, making pasta from scratch as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Over dinner, the distance between them dissolved. They spoke not as boss and employee, nor even as two professionals, but as two people who had lived enough to stop pretending. Ethan shared stories about his father, a janitor who had raised him alone and dreamed of opening a hotel, a dream Ethan had made real but never shared with anyone until now. Emily, in turn, spoke about her mother, about the photo she still kept taped to her mirror, and how every step forward she took felt like whispering to her memory, "I'm doing it, Mom. I'm still standing." After dinner, they sat on the porch as a soft rain began to fall. The air between them was thick with everything they weren't saying. Then, finally, Ethan broke the silence. "I'm not sure when it happened," he said quietly, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as someone I simply admire and started seeing you as someone I don't want to imagine this life without." Emily turned to him, her breath catching halfway in her chest. She wanted to speak, to be clear, to say what she felt, but there were no perfect words for a moment like this. "Ethan, this is real for me too," she said, her voice trembling. "But I've worked so hard to be taken seriously. If anyone finds out—" "They'll say what they always say," Ethan finished for her, his voice calm but firm. "That you don't belong here, that I only chose you for something other than your mind." He paused, his gaze steady on hers. "But you and I will know the truth, and if you choose to walk away to protect what you've built, I'll respect that. But if you choose to stay, I promise no one will ever doubt your worth. Not while I'm still breathing." In that moment, Emily saw him not as a man of power, but as a man of courage. He wasn't just offering her love, he was offering a partnership. She reached for his hand, her eyes steady. "I'm not walking away." The next morning, the entire hotel buzzed with news. The Emperor Group had closed a record-breaking deal to expand into Europe, with Emily's work cited by investors as crucial. She was promoted again, this time to Director of International Strategy. But what really made headlines was the announcement that stunned everyone. Ethan Morgan, the notoriously private mogul, had publicly introduced Emily, not just as his business partner, but as the woman he was building a future with. Critics whispered, gossip swirled, but it all faded when, 6 months later, the ribbon was cut on their Amsterdam hotel. Emily stood beside Ethan as cameras flashed and reporters cheered. The woman who had once mopped the marble floors of a luxury hotel was now overseeing deals, mentoring teams, and flying between continents. Her life had changed, but she had not where it mattered. That evening, back in their suite overlooking the canals, Ethan pulled her into a quiet embrace. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Emily looked at him, tears in her eyes. "About everything it took to get here. About how I almost gave up before that one phone call. About how love can find you when you least expect it." He smiled, and for a moment, nothing else existed but them. "Now, let me ask you this. After everything Emily went through, what do you think made the biggest difference in her journey? Was it Ethan's support, her own resilience, or that one moment of courage when she answered a call in a foreign language? And most of all, did this story touch your heart? If it did, drop 100 in the comments to show your love. Let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video with someone who still believes in dreams that come true in the most unexpected ways. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.